In recent years, there's been lots of discussion about the level of state debts or liabilities. How many do we have? How are we going to pay them off? What's the impact on the state budget, both now and in the future? In our report, we first try to provide some context for understanding these state liabilities, and then provide to the legislature a suggested approach on how we might address them. We start by identifying the state liabilities, and we put them in one of three categories. As shown in the chart, the biggest one by far are retirement-related liabilities. These are the unfunded liabilities that are associated with our state retiree pension systems and also related to state retiree health care. The second category is infrastructure. This represents the principal amount on bonds that have been issued by the state in order to finance various capital outlay projects. The smallest category is what we call budgetary liabilities. Many of these were incurred during the recent years as the state has dealt with very difficult budgetary situations. In total, we estimate that these liabilities are in the range of $340 billion. That's about 3 times the size of our annual state general fund budget. Some people would place that number at a much higher amount. Typically, they make different assumptions about what the unfunded liabilities are related to our state retiree unfunded liabilities. We then look at these liabilities and place them in one of two main categories. They're either state liabilities that the state is already addressing in some way, or they represent liabilities that merit additional attention by the legislature. The first category, the ones that we are already addressing, a good example would be state bonds. We already have a mechanism to pay off the debt service on those bonds over time. The dollars are built into our budget, so the state really doesn't have to do anything extra. We've already sort of addressed that liability. These represent about 40% of that total, that $340 billion that I referenced earlier. The remaining 60%, however, represent liabilities where we really need to do something. We need to take some action in order to fund them over time. A good example is our liabilities related to our retiree systems. CalSTRS, the state teacher systems, being probably the most important one. In the last part of the report, we provide for the legislature a suggested approach on how they may deal with these liabilities going forward. First of all, we think it would be important for the legislature to adopt many of the provisions of the governor's budget approach for 2014-15, where he pays off a lot of school deferrals, makes payments on special fund loans, and makes additional payments on our economic recovery bonds. Secondly, we think that the legislature should place very high priority on addressing the unfunded liability of the state's teacher retirement system. After that, we would give priorities for paying off our other liabilities, with the state retiree health system liabilities being for us a very high priority. We then have various budgetary liabilities, including the so-called wall of debt, that we think the legislature should turn to, followed by liabilities such as pre-funding workers' comp and state employee leave. Our last suggested recommendation has to do with how we deal with these liabilities in the future. We stress to the legislature that it's critically important to pay for costs as they accrue. This will ensure that once we take care of the existing unfunded liabilities that we have on our books, we won't create additional ones in the future.